everyone, and welcome to our Akron Zoo Lunch and Learn. My name is Kaitlyn, and I am a wild animal keeper here at your Akron Zoo. I wanted to follow along a little bit in Autumn's footsteps from a previous Lunch and Learn and take you all on a tour of the Grizzly Ridge area. This is one of my favorite parts of the zoo because it focuses a lot on our native wildlife here in North America. So some of the animals that we'll see today, you might be able to see even in your own backyards, which has always been my passion, going out into the parks around me and seeing what animals I can find. So hopefully you will all be able to see at least a few of these animals in your own yards here while we're in quarantine, unfortunately. So we're starting here at our bald eagle exhibits. Keith, the keeper, was just out here, so some of the eagles have been moving around while he was servicing. I think I can see 1, 2 here. Of our 6, we have 3 males and 3 females. One odd thing that you might notice about their home is that it does not have a top. And that is because all of our eagles are rehabilitated eagles. So that means at some point they were living out in their native habitat and they were injured in some way, so they can no longer take care of themselves. So all 6 of them have made their way here to the Akron Zoo for a second chance at life. We can take care of them, feed them, keep them safe, give them medicine if they don't feel well, and in return, they help to teach people all about how amazing bald eagles are. Hopefully you could hear over my talking the squeaking sound that the eagles were making, because commonly Hollywood loves to use the red-tailed hawk call when it depicts bald eagles and also vultures who don't really make any noise at all. I think just big birds tend to be red-tailed hawks as far as Hollywood is concerned. So this cute little squeaking, chirping noise is actually what the bald eagle sounds like. Not very majestic, so I think that's why Hollywood went a different direction. So bald eagles have a tumultuous history throughout North America, as I'm sure you know. We had some issues with pesticides, especially in the 60s, and some habitat destruction and loss. So for a long time, we had a very limited amount of bald eagles that we could find. There were less than 500 nesting pairs throughout the entire United States. So we started to make a change. We limited the amount of pollution that we used. We started to clean up wherever we were dumping trash, and we made sure that we protected the great areas that these animals can live. And now, just in the state of Ohio, we have about 400 nesting pairs. So that made a huge difference, and it was really important to us as our national symbol to protect this amazing large predator. The last thing about the bald eagle that I'll mention is their bald head. They're not actually bald, like if you were to look at a turkey vulture. Bald is an old word that means white on top. So once they turn about 5 years old, they get in that white head. For the first 5 years of their life, they have a really dark head that becomes mottled. So we don't actually know how old our bald eagles are, because by the time they got to us, they all had their white heads. So we know that they were at least 5 when they came here to live at the zoo, but unfortunately we don't have a very good age on them because of that.
Ayla wants to know what the average wingspan is for the eagles.
They can have up to a 7-foot wingspan. So find your tallest friend, have them lay down on the ground, and it still would not be as wide as an eagle's wingspan. If you're out birding and you're looking for eagles, obviously you're looking for a huge, intimidating wingspan, but the difference between a bald eagle and a turkey vulture is the shape of their wings. So when a bald eagle is soaring, they fly perfectly flat like a board, versus a turkey vulture has a tilt, and that helps them to catch the thermal so that they're not putting as much energy into flying.
Steve is asking, where's Yogi? I'm not quite sure.
I'm sorry, repeat that name?
A yogi.
I'm not familiar with that. Maybe it was before my time.
Okay.
All right, so let's move our way up to our songbird aviary. And on our way, we can check out our Soar Like an Eagle area, which hopefully everyone will get to use again here soon. And that helps you to get a good look at the silhouette of an eagle. And again, you can see that white head when they're flying up above and the white tail underneath, and perfectly flat like a board. So our next area is our songbird aviary. It is closed since we are closed, so we won't be able to go into it, but at least we can talk about how amazing it is, because it is very special in that it is home to the largest number of native songbirds anywhere in North America. So we have about 70 individuals representing 30 different species here in the songbird aviary. as large as turkeys and down to small little finches and wrens. So birding is something that you can do easily in your own backyard, and a lot of the species that are represented in here are very common. Much like our bald eagles, they were all injured out in their native habitats and got a second chance at life here with us. I can see, I don't know if you guys have good vision, but I can see an eastern towhee through, and a sparrow, field sparrow, and a dark-eyed junco. So as you start birding, the first thing that you'll want to do is grab yourself a very good bird book because a lot of these birds, especially small sparrows, all look the same. They're kind of brown and tan and white. It's easy to mix them all up, and they're super tiny, so if they're flitting off, it's hard to tell. The next thing you'll want to do is identify their silhouette. So much like we talked about the difference between the bald eagle and the turkey vulture, some of them have a larger wingspan, some of them you can see a lot of the slots, the fingering in between at the tips of their wings, and their behavior. So if the bird is hanging from a tree, it's much more likely to be a woodpecker or a nuthatch versus something like a sparrow that would be perched on the side of a building or a fence.
April is asking, how can we help native birds?
Oh, that's actually a great question. There's a couple really wonderful citizen science projects that we here at the zoo participate in, and we would love for you to help us. So one we missed for the year, it's our Christmas bird count. So in the Christmas area of the year, late December and early January, the Audubon helps to encourage everyone to sign up and go out and track the birds that they can find in their area. And that helps us to keep track of population trends, where are animals living, maybe they're leaving one area and going to another, and then they can move conservation funds to where they need to go, which is great. Another program we work with is Lights Out Ohio. So we are trying to encourage big cities, as birds are migrating in the spring and the fall, to turn off their lights, because it turns out that birds can't see glass very well. So if they're flying into the city and the lights are shining in the windows, they often strike the windows. Which is not great for them, unfortunately. Wildlife rehabbers can help and take care of them, but if we can stop the striking before it even happens, that's ideal. That's what we'd like to do.
Roberto wants to know how long they can fly before landing.
It depends on the bird. There are many birds that can go hours and hours, 8 or more hours, depending on if they can catch thermals. So I mentioned like a turkey vulture has that big wingspan. So as they're flying, they catch hot air that's rising up off the ground, and that helps so that they don't have to flap their wings at all, so they can go much, much longer.
Rachel would like to know, how much do they eat?
Again, depends on the bird. And we have a whole variety of birds in here. Some of them are seed eaters. Some of them eat fruit. We have some predatory nut birds in here so much, although turkeys can eat meat if they want to. A lot more insectivores. So it totally depends on the bird. Usually birds tend to have higher metabolism, and especially in this cold, they need to burn a lot of energy to keep warm. Our birds do have access to indoor space to help them, but a lot of it is just them eating a whole lot of food and burning a lot of calories. Perfect. All right, so as we move past here, you guys can have a sneak peek of the beautiful city of Akron, the top of our hill here. And again, hopefully you'll be able to come back and use our binoculars and see what you can see. Maybe some awesome birds out over the city. One of the great things about our Grizzly Ridge area is some of the hidden treasures that we have up here. So I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but our first hidden treasure is this little rock structure. So maybe with the snow, I hope it moves. Yeah. So here is a little symbol of a red-backed salamander, and the main idea here is to talk about our amphibians that live here in Ohio. We can find 24 different species of salamander here, which is a whole lot of variety. Now is a great time of year to start looking for salamanders because they come out of where they spent the winter and they all go to vernal pools so that they can breed. So even underground salamanders like the spotted salamander that you normally don't see all the time because they're underground, now is a great time of year that you can see them. So amphibians are really important because they breathe through their skin, so they're an indicator species. If we start to have too much pollution, then the first thing that we see go are our amphibians. So we want to keep track of them pretty closely.
One quick question about the birds again. Are there any endangered birds in Ohio? It's being asked.
There are a lot of endangered birds in Ohio. I'm trying to think of a few specific examples. It fluctuates often. So luckily, something like our bald eagle that used to be endangered no longer is. I want to say a Kirtland's warbler would be an example of something that's endangered. I have an assistant here that's going to help us Google.
Plover.
Oh yes, plovers, yeah. Some of our shorebirds are endangered, and that's because I'm sure you guys love to go to the beach. If you live up by Cleveland, you can hit up Edgewater. That's also where some of our shorebirds like to live, and so the interactions between people and the birds make it very difficult sometimes. So a lot of our shorebirds have some issues, and marsh birds as well. All right, we can take a quick dip in here. Oh, we've got both grizzlies out. Perfect. Our two grizzlies are Jackson and Cheyenne. Enjoying the sunshine, I see. They are a brother and sister pair that were orphaned in Wyoming. So a lot of times wildlife has issues when people get involved. Sometimes animals aren't truly orphaned when people bring them in. They just haven't seen the mom around and they don't recognize that sometimes babies are much more independent in their native habitat than us humans would be. We don't really have grizzly bears here in Ohio, but we do see black bears occasionally. In the 1800s, they were extirpated, which is a big fancy word that means locally extinct. And it was because of habitat loss, so we got rid of a lot of the big, dense forests that we had here in Ohio, and we were also afraid of them. So unfortunately, for a lot of the large predators here in Ohio, people tended to eliminate them just because they were afraid. They didn't want them hurting their families. They didn't want them getting into their livestock. So we lost our black bears in the late 1800s, although we are starting to see them come back. It looks like most of the bears that we see are like bachelors from Pennsylvania that are wandering around trying to find their own territory and maybe a mate. So we see about 50-ish black bears throughout the state of Ohio, mostly down in the south where there's a lot of wooded safe space for them.
Elliot wants to know if these bears hibernate.
Hibernate is a word. This is one of my things that bothers me. So Elliot's in for a lecture here today. Hibernate has a specific meaning, which says the animal drops its core body temperature, drops its heart rate, and drops its metabolism. So the reason that bears, like the grizzly bears, don't meet that criteria is because they cannot drop their core body temperature as low as true hibernators. So our groundhog, for example, is a true hibernator, and they drop their core body temperature from about 96 degrees down to about 46 degrees. So that is a huge drop. Bears drop their temperature just a little bit, and they do slow down their metabolism, but they're much lighter sleepers than groundhogs would be. So they're not true hibernators by the real definition of the word.
Roberto wants to know if the bears ever try to fight for dominance.
Just like you might have a brother and sister that might get on your nerves or eat your favorite snack when you were saving it in the kitchen, these two siblings can do the same thing. If one of them wants to go home first or something like that, they can have little spats. But generally, much like I hope you guys love your brothers and sisters, they like to hang out with each other and they're not big fighters.
Chris wants to know what is the largest animal at the Akron Zoo.
Jackson, you actually just saw him. Right now he's about 600 pounds, but... Sorry? Donovan? No, I think it's Jackson. I think it's Jackson. Donovan's a big boy, but I'm pretty sure Jackson is up there. He can reach up to 700 pounds, so that's a big, hefty boy. And we know this because if you have ever been to our grizzly training wall, we have a scale that's built in. So as the bears go from the front area of their house to the inside area of their house, we can weigh them on a scale and we can keep track of how much they're eating, and that's a good way for us to know whether or not they're healthy if they suddenly drop a whole lot of weight.
Lane and Lillian are asking what the bears eat.
Bears are omnivores, so they eat a whole variety of things that include meat. I'm sure you guys have seen grizzly bears fishing in the streams pulling up salmon, but they can eat fruits, seeds, nuts, moss, pretty much anything that they can get their hands on, and it changes based on the season. So whatever's available, they're going to eat something that's fresh and in season before moving on to a different option. So in here we have another little hidden gem. If you guys can see the bats up above our river otter viewing window. We have 10 different species of bat that live here in Ohio. Most commonly we have the little brown bat and the big brown bat. but bats are definitely our friends because our Ohio bats are insectivores. So that means all those pesky little summer bugs that you don't like in your yard, those bats are taking care of. So now's the time of the year that they're starting to come out of their hibernaculum. Bats are hibernators, and they are looking for denning spaces for the summer so that moms can have their babies. So if you put up a bat box and keep it nice and warm in the sun, and you offer a water supply for them, you might have some bats come around and pick off some of your bugs that you don't like. So we've made it up to the top of where the bears, I mentioned where the training wall is, so hopefully you can come back and see it at an amazing training session with our bears because it's very cool to see them up close. Get a little wind going on here at the top of the hill. All right, head over to see Molly, our North American river otter. Hopefully everyone checked out the video yesterday with Lisa training Molly, so it was really amazing. If not, definitely go back to that. Should you go back inside? Come on out, Molly. So right now we have one North American river otter. Her name is Molly. I'm guessing you have figured out a trend here because otters were also extirpated or locally extinct here in Ohio, also during the 1800s, and for similar reasons than a lot of the other animals that we've met today. So people had a dilution is the solution to pollution little rhyme that they thought was true. So that meant if you dumped all your garbage in the lake, there's plenty of water, so it didn't matter. But it turns out that's not true at all. So our otters had a difficult time with a lot of pollution in the waterways where they were living and hunting. And they have very thick, warm fur coats. So the water here is just above freezing. It's only in the 50s, so you would definitely not want to swim in it. But Molly's warm fur coat keeps her warm and dry. So pelts from otters were very important for early trappers and traders. So unfortunately, we did completely eliminate river otters for a while. But luckily, we cleaned up our act. We cleaned up all of our riverways. We started protecting them so we don't hunt them anymore. And it all started with 124 otters that were re-released back into Ohio, and now they're found in 80 out of our 88 counties. So a really amazing success story with just a little bit of effort. Molly's inside where it's warm. It is a little bit chilly today, so I don't blame her. So we will make our way over to the Red Wolf exhibit. Hopefully you guys caught Kristen talking because we have a new addition here to our Red Wolf house, and that is Juno. So she just came a few weeks ago to be a mate to our male Waya. See if we can see anybody in here. They are hard to spot.
We can see the coyotes way far
We
off.
can see the coyotes moving. We'll head that way. Maybe they're, oh wait, there's a wolf. Hello. So red wolves are amazing because they are the most endangered canine in the world. There are only about 20 of them out in their native habitat. That's right, 20. So the Akron Zoo helps participate in their species survival program, and we work closely with the Red Wolf Coalition so that we can help to protect their habitat and ideally re-release some of these zoo wolves back out into their native habitat. So that's our goal here with Juno and Waya, is hopefully they become very close friends and mates. We missed this year's breeding season just by a little bit, so maybe if fingers crossed they like each other in 2021, we'll have some wolf pups to help coordinate the population a little bit better.
Miata wants to know what weather do they like?
They live sort of along the coast in the North Carolina area is where we find them the most. So a little bit nicer than our weather, a little bit less snow, but they've got really thick warm fur coats, so they're pretty tolerant of this weather. And like I mentioned, they have a den area where you can see some straw bedding that helps to keep them warm. And we make sure that they have plenty of space and area to den down in so that they don't get cold.
Were they shocked to see the snow today?
I'm not sure, actually. I wasn't here when they were first experiencing the snow this morning. Much like the rest of us, I'm guessing they were hoping for spring, and we got a little trick from Mother Nature, right?
Roberta wants to know if the coyotes can climb trees and if they ever try to.
Coyotes are not great tree climbers. They certainly can try because they aren't very picky eaters. So they might get to lower limbs depending on how the tree is, if it's bent and has some big thick branches down low. But really the only canids that can climb trees is the gray fox, which is also native to Ohio, and there is an Asian raccoon dog that is also able to climb trees. So they are true tree climbers, not like our coyotes that are just kind of sneaky tree climbers.
Lillian wants to know, how fast can the red wolves run?
That I'm not sure offhand. We will find out for you, Lillian. We'll head down to another viewing window and see if we see both of our wolves, and we'll take a look at our coyote friends while we're down there as well. Did you find it? About 30 miles an hour, which is pretty crazy if you ask me. I'm definitely not that fast. All right, let's see if we can spot some wolves here. See the coyotes again, and the wolf up sort of by the coyotes there on the right. That is Waya up there visiting our coyote friends. And Juno's all the way in the back. I can see her running along the fence line back there. So to compare the red wolves and the coyotes, since we're headed to the coyotes next, our male Waya weighs about 68 pounds versus a very large coyote would only be about 30 pounds. So they're well over double the size. And a big problem that the red wolves had when people were starting to move into this area is that they were confusing them with coyotes. And people tend, again, to be a little bit afraid of a predator that like a coyote. And coyotes tend to get into livestock and garbage, and they might even be interested in pets. So coyotes have a really bad reputation, and people have a difficult time telling them apart. So unfortunately, the red wolf took a lot of the brunt of people's dislike for coyotes. So again, we have a brother and sister pair in here, Shyla and Kaliska. Coyotes are truly amazing animals that are really underappreciated. There's a great research project that's been going on in Chicago for over a decade that helps to really tease out everything that we can possibly learn about coyotes and help us to better live with them. So a lot of times people think urban coyotes, like in downtown Chicago, would want to eat your pet dogs, your pet cats, or get into your garbage. But the researchers found that for each of those, that was less than 2% of their diet. So even in the middle of the city, where there's tons of people and cars and traffic, they were still finding good, wild, healthy, natural food, like rabbits, squirrels, berries. They were eating crab apples, they were eating rodents. So certainly you should be aware, and you shouldn't leave your trash open for many animals, but I wouldn't be as worried about the coyotes getting into your house and your yard as people tend to be on the internet. Coyotes are actually really amazing family animals. So much like you would think of a wolf pack, coyotes tend to live in a family unit where it's a mother, a father, and their pups from that year. And if they have a really good area that they can protect their territory, they can keep last year's girls on to help raise the next litter of pups. So they can be a pretty big family unit. A lot of animals that we consider monogamous aren't actually monogamous. But coyotes, the same research project looked at the babies in the den and the fathers that were helping to take care of them. And almost every single coyote, the father that was taking care of them, matched the babies. So when you think about coyotes, maybe if you think a little bit more about how amazing they are as a family unit and how great they are at surviving and thriving and making their way throughout the Ohio landscape, you might appreciate them a little bit more if you think about them as little garbage monsters.
Okay.
So do we have any questions about the coyotes or anything else we talked about?
You've answered what they eat.
Yay!
We had a question of the fastest animal at the zoo.
Fastest animal at the zoo. My first guess offhand would be our bald eagle in a stoop. They fly about 30 to 40 miles an hour just when they're moving from place to place. But if they are in a dive to catch some prey, they can fly at 100 miles an hour. So that's pretty quick.
Gracie wants to know if they can eat grass, like coyotes.
They actually can. It's not one of their preferred food sources, but again, they aren't very picky. So as the seasons change and food becomes difficult to find, they can eat grass as well. So I hope you guys really enjoyed checking out the Grizzly Ridge area of the zoo. It's my favorite. Hopefully it's your favorite too. We hope to see you again tomorrow at our Lunch and Learns.